She had 3 seconds to decide if breaking the most sacred rule of the Korean underworld was worth dying for. Nora Wade wasn't supposed to be here standing in the rain at a New Jersey cemetery, surrounded by men whose suits concealed more weapons than grief. She wasn't supposed to know that the trembling hand of the mourner 2 rows ahead wasn't shaking from sorrow, but from the weight of a toxin-filled needle aimed at the back of Cha Jae-won's neck. But she did know, and in exactly 3 seconds, the man who could dismantle the most dangerous crime network in America would be dead, killed not by a rival gang, but by his own family. If you're already wondering how this ends, smash that subscribe button now, because what happens next breaks every rule you thought you knew about Mafia romance. The rain fell harder, drumming against black umbrellas like a countdown. Nora's pulse hammered in her ears as she watched the assassin's hand slide into his coat. She'd spent 6 months tracking the shadow organization known as the White Lotus, piecing together breadcrumbs of corruption that led her here to this exact moment, this exact funeral, this exact execution. The young Mafia boss stood at the head of his father's casket, his face a mask of controlled grief. Tall, sharp-featured, with ink-black hair slicked back from a face that belonged on magazine covers rather than most wanted lists. Cha Jae-won, 28 years old, Harvard-educated, ruthless, and completely unaware that the needle meant for his spine was already in motion. Nora had 2 choices. Let the underworld's best chance at reformation die, or commit the ultimate act of disrespect in Korean funeral tradition and mark herself for death. She chose chaos. Nora lunged forward, shoving through the wall of mourners. Gasps erupted. Hands reached to stop her, but she was already moving, already committed. She didn't reach for the assassin. She reached for Jae-won, her hand fisted in the front of his black suit as she yanked him toward her. His eyes dark, dangerous, startled, locked on hers for a fraction of a heartbeat. Then she crashed her mouth against his. The world exploded into shocked silence. To everyone watching, it was blasphemy. An American woman kissing a Mafia boss over his father's casket, violating every sacred protocol the syndicate held dear. But Nora felt the exact moment Jae-won's body shifted 3 inches to the left, felt the subtle hiss of air as the needle drove deep into mahogany wood instead of flesh. She'd just saved his life. She'd also just signed her own death warrant. When she pulled back, Jae-won's expression was unreadable, but his hand had already moved to the gun beneath his jacket. Around them, his guards materialized like shadows, weapons trained on her head. The assassin was melting into the crowd, trying to disappear into the rain-soaked cemetery. But Nora didn't move, didn't run. She kept her hand pressed against Jae-won's chest, feeling his heart pound beneath expensive fabric, and whispered the only words that mattered. The needle is in the wood. Your uncle gave the order, and I just planted a transmitter on you that's recording everything. For a long moment, Jae-won stared at her. Rain dripped from his hair onto her upturned face. Then, slowly, deliberately, he wrapped his fingers around her wrist, not to remove her hand, but to hold it in place. Who are you? His voice was low, dangerous, laced with an accent that made each word sound like a threat and a promise. The woman who just ruined her life to save yours. Nora's smile was sharp, reckless. Nora Wade, former CIA, current problem. His grip tightened. If you're lying, then you'll kill me yourself. I know. She tilted her head, unflinching under the barrels of a dozen guns. But first, you might want to hear the recording of your uncle discussing your silent execution with the man who trained me and then tried to break me. Something shifted in his eyes. Not trust, not yet, but curiosity, calculation. The kind of look a predator gives when it recognizes another predator worth keeping alive. Take her, he ordered his guards, never breaking eye contact with Nora. But don't hurt her. Not yet. As strong hands gripped her arms, dragging her away from the casket and into an armored vehicle, Nora caught one last glimpse of Jae-won. He was staring at the needle embedded in his father's coffin, his expression colder than the rain, darker than the gathering storm. She'd just crashed headfirst into the Korean Mafia's deadliest secret. And somehow, impossibly, she'd survived the first 5 minutes. Now came the hard part. Surviving the interrogation. Because the man she'd just kissed wasn't grateful. He was suspicious. And in his world, suspicion was a death sentence served with immaculate precision. But what Jae-won didn't know, what no one in that cemetery knew, was that Nora Wade didn't save his life out of heroism or chance. She saved him because the man hired to kill him was the same man who destroyed her career, her reputation, and very nearly her soul. Vance, her former mentor, her greatest betrayer, and she'd just declared war on him in the most spectacular way possible, by keeping his target alive and placing herself directly in the crossfire of a syndicate war she had no business surviving. The vehicle door slammed shut. Through the rain-streaked window, she watched the cemetery fade into the distance along with any chance of a normal life. Across from her sat 3 stone-faced guards, weapons ready, eyes cold. Nora pressed her back against the leather seat and closed her eyes, feeling the ghost of Jaewon's lips against hers, the memory of his heartbeat under her palm. 3 seconds, that's all it took to change everything. Now she just had to figure out how to survive. What came next? Facing down a Mafia boss who didn't trust her, hunting down a mentor who wanted her dead, and navigating a criminal empire that saw her as either a weapon or a threat. Or maybe just maybe both. The safe house wasn't what Nora expected. No dungeon, no torture chamber, just a converted warehouse in Newark with concrete floors, exposed steel beams, and enough security cameras to make the Pentagon jealous. They'd stripped her of everything: phone, weapons, the small tracker she'd hidden in her boot, but they'd missed the one thing that mattered. The backup recording device sewn into the lining of her jacket. Amateur mistake. Or maybe Jaewon wanted her to keep it. She sat in a metal chair, bolted to the floor, hands zip-tied behind her back, watching rain hammer against the high windows. 3 hours had passed since the cemetery. 3 hours of silence broken only by the rhythmic drip of water from her soaked clothes onto concrete. Then the door opened. Jaewon entered alone. No guards, no entourage, just him, moving through the space like he owned the air itself. He'd changed the funeral suit, replaced by dark pants and a black shirt rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with intricate tattoos that definitely weren't part of any Harvard education. He didn't speak, just pulled up a chair, sat down 3 feet away, and studied her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Nora held his stare. "You're welcome, by the way. For assaulting me at my father's funeral? For keeping you alive to have this conversation." His jaw tightened. "Show me proof. Cut these off first." She nodded at her bound wrists. "Not how this works. Then we're at an impasse." Nora leaned back as much as the restraints allowed. "Because the recording device that proves your uncle tried to kill you is sewn into my jacket. And unless you've suddenly developed X-ray vision, you're going to need my cooperation to find it." Something flickered across his face, not quite amusement, but close. He stood, moved behind her. She felt the cold press of a blade against her wrists, then the zip tie snapped. Her hands fell free, circulation rushing back in painful tingles. Jaewon returned to his chair, the knife still in his hand. "Now." Nora shrugged out of her damp jacket, found the nearly invisible seam at the collar, and ripped. A device no bigger than a shirt button fell into her palm. She placed it on the floor between them. "Play it." He picked it up, examined it, then pulled out his phone and connected. Static crackled, then voices filled the warehouse. "Execution must look natural. The funeral provides perfect cover." Nora watched Jaewon's expression freeze as he recognized the voice. His uncle, the man who'd stood beside him at the funeral, face painted with false grief. "Vance guarantees the toxin is undetectable. 3 seconds of contact, 4 hours until cardiac arrest. They'll think it's stress, grief. No one questions a man dying after burying his father." Another voice, colder, American. "I'll need half up front. The other half when the chairman's brat is confirmed dead. Vance." Nora's hands curled into fists at the sound of his voice. "Done. But Vance make it hurt." The recording ended. Silence swallowed the warehouse whole. Jaewon's knuckles were white around the device. When he finally looked up, his eyes were black ice. "This was 2 days ago. I intercepted it 48 hours before the funeral." Nora's voice was steady despite her racing pulse. "Spent every second since trying to identify the target and stop it. Turns out, crashing Korean mob funerals isn't exactly protocol-friendly. You could have warned me, sent a message, called, and risk your uncle intercepting it? He controls your security detail, your communications, half your enforcers." She leaned forward. "The only way to stop that needle was to be there, in that moment, with no one knowing I was coming." Jaewon stood abruptly, began pacing. The knife spun between his fingers, a nervous habit that somehow made him more dangerous, not less. "Why? Why? Why what? Why risk your life for mine?" He stopped, turned. "You're CIA. Former CIA. We're not exactly allies." Nora met his eyes. "The man your uncle hired, Vance? He was my commanding officer, My mentor. 3 years ago, he burned an entire operation to cover his own corruption, then blamed me for it. I lost everything, my career, my reputation, my team. Her voice dropped. He made me a ghost, so I became one. Started tracking him, following his contracts. And when I discovered he'd been hired to kill you, I saw an opportunity. Revenge. Justice. She stood, closing the distance between them. Your uncle isn't working alone. He's connected to something bigger, the White Lotus. They're dismantling syndicate leadership across 3 states, consolidating power. Your father wasn't the first chairman to die under mysterious circumstances, and you won't be the last successor they target. Jaewon's expression shifted from cold fury to calculated interest. You have proof of this? 6 months of surveillance. Names, dates, financial transactions. Nora's smile was sharp. Everything you need to burn your uncle's operation to ash. Everything Vance needs to disappear forever. He studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he extended his hand not for a shake, but palm up, offering the knife handle first. If you're lying, use this on yourself now. Save us both time. Nora looked at the blade, then at him. And if I'm telling the truth, then you and I are going to have a very interesting conversation about what happens next. His eyes glittered with something dangerous and electric. Because if my uncle wants me dead, and you want Vance dead, it seems we have aligned interests. You mean partnership. I mean survival. He tilted his head. With extremely violent benefits. Nora took the knife, felt its weight, then set it down on the chair between them. A gesture of trust neither of them quite believed yet. I'll need access to your father's medical records, your security footage from the past month, and a list of everyone who attended that funeral. She crossed her arms. And I need to know, when did your father actually die? Jaewon's face went cold as winter. 3 days ago, in his sleep. No warning, no illness. The doctors said, heart failure. They lied. Nora's voice was quiet, deadly. Because the same toxin they tried to use on you? It was already tested. On your father. The warehouse went silent except for rain and thunder. When Jaewon finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Then this wasn't just about killing me. No. Nora stepped closer. This was about stealing an empire, and we just became the only 2 people standing in their way. The autopsy report arrived at midnight. Nora sat across from Jaewon in what he called his clean room, a glass-walled office inside the warehouse, soundproofed and swept for bugs every 6 hours. Between them lay a laptop, medical files, and 3 cups of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. She'd been right. The toxin signatures were identical. Sodium thallium compound, modified with a time-release polymer. Jaewon's finger traced the lab results on screen, his voice eerily calm. Undetectable in standard toxicology. Mimics natural cardiac arrest perfectly. He looked up. How did you know? Because Vance helped develop it. Nora's jaw tightened. Black Ops program, 2019. Designed for political assassinations that needed to look clean. The agency shut it down after congressional oversight got too close. But Vance kept the formula. And now he's selling it to the highest bidder. Not selling. Deploying. She pulled up a file on her own tablet, 6 months of painstaking research. 4 syndicate deaths in 18 months. All ruled natural causes. All men in their 50s and 60s. All replaced by successors who suddenly aligned with White Lotus interests within weeks. Jaewon's eyes darkened as he scanned the names. I know these families. My father met with 2 of them before he died. They were discussing territorial disputes, power-sharing agreements. They were discussing staying alive. Nora leaned forward. Your father figured it out, didn't he? That's why they killed him early. Before he could warn you. Silence stretched between them, heavy with implications neither wanted to voice. Finally, Jaewon closed the laptop with deliberate precision. My uncle visited my father the night before he died. Brought him tea. Said it would help him sleep. His hands curled into fists. I watched him do it. Thanked him for being so caring. You couldn't have known. I should have. The words came out raw, dangerous. I'm supposed to be the smart one, the Harvard graduate who modernized the family business, who saw threats coming before they materialized. And I missed the snake sleeping in my own house. Nora recognized that tone. The same one she'd used on herself for 3 years. Every time she replayed the operation Vance destroyed. Self-blame won't kill your uncle. Strategy will. Then strategize. Jaewon stood abruptly, moved to the glass wall overlooking the warehouse floor. Because right now, he thinks I'm grieving, vulnerable, willing to accept his guidance during the transition. He doesn't know about you, doesn't know I have the recording. How do we use that? We make him think he won. Nora joined him at the window. You play the devastated son, slowly falling apart under the weight of leadership. Make mistakes. Ask for his advice. Let him think you're easy to manipulate. While you do what? Get close to Vance. The words tasted like ash. He doesn't know I'm in New Jersey. Thinks I'm still chasing ghosts in Seattle. If I reach out, claim I have information on White Lotus operations he'd be interested in, he'll take the meeting. His ego won't let him resist. Jaewon turned to face her fully. You want to walk into a trap. I want to set one. Nora's smile was cold. Vance taught me everything I know about manipulation, infiltration, psychological warfare, but he made one mistake. He thought breaking me would destroy me. Instead, it just removed my limitations. Meaning I know how he thinks, how he operates, what makes him feel safe. She held Jaewon's stare. And I know exactly how to make him suffer before he dies. Something shifted in the air between them, a recognition of shared darkness, shared purpose. Jaewon stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, smell the rain still clinging to his skin. This partnership, he said quietly, it only works if we trust each other completely. No secrets, no hidden agendas. Agreed. Then tell me the real reason you saved my life. His voice dropped lower. Because revenge on Vance doesn't explain why you'd risk everything for a stranger. Nora's breath caught. For a moment, she considered lying, considered giving him the easy answer, the professional one, but something in his eyes demanded truth. My team, she said finally, the operation Vance burned. 3 people died because I trusted him, because I followed his orders without question. Her hands trembled slightly. I spent 3 years hunting him, trying to find proof he was dirty, and every lead went cold. Every witness disappeared, until I intercepted that recording of your uncle hiring him. So this isn't just about Vance. No. She met his eyes. This is about stopping him before more people die for his profit. Your father, those other chairmen, my team, they all died because powerful men decided their lives were acceptable losses. Her voice hardened. I'm done accepting losses. Jaewon was quiet for a long moment, studying her face like he was memorizing every line, every shadow. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled small, genuine, and somehow more dangerous than any expression she'd seen him wear. You know what the worst part is? He turned back to the window. I actually like you. And in my world, that's usually a death sentence. Lucky for you, I'm hard to kill. I'm counting on it. He glanced at his watch. My uncle expects me for breakfast in 6 hours. Family tradition after funerals, discussing succession, reviewing accounts, accepting condolences from underbosses. His expression went cold. I'll play the grieving son. You start planning how to contact Vance. We regroup here tomorrow night. And if something goes wrong at breakfast? Jaewon pulled a phone from his pocket, brand new, still in packaging, encrypted line. Only you and I have the number. If I text the word protocol, it means I'm compromised. Get out of New Jersey and don't look back. Nora took the phone, their fingers brushing. I don't abandon partners. Even ones you've known for less than 12 hours? Especially those. She pocketed the device. Besides, you still owe me for that kiss. Saving your life twice in one day seems excessive. His laugh was unexpected, brief, but real. Twice? The kiss saved you from the needle. The recording saved you from shooting the wrong person and starting a war you couldn't win. Nora headed for the door. You're welcome. Again. Nora. She paused, looked back. Jaewon's expression was unreadable, but his voice carried weight. When this is over, when we've burned them all down, remind me to properly thank you for that kiss. Heat flashed through her, unbidden and dangerous. She forced her voice to stay steady. I'll hold you to that. The warehouse door closed behind her, and Nora stepped into the rain-soaked Newark night, heart pounding with something that wasn't quite fear and wasn't quite anticipation. She'd just allied herself with a Mafia boss, declared war on her former mentor, and somehow managed to feel more alive than she had in 3 years. The question was, would she survive long enough to regret it? The email to Vance took Nora 4 hours to write. She sat in a motel room 40 minutes outside Newark, the kind of place that didn't ask questions and accepted cash. Rain streaked the windows as she stared at the laptop screen, cursor blinking in the empty message field. Too eager and he'd smell a trap. Too cold and he'd ignore it. The tone had to be perfect, desperate enough to seem genuine, professional enough to seem valuable. Finally, she typed, V, I know you thought burning me would make me disappear. Instead, it made me better. I have intel on White Lotus operations you'll want. Seattle location compromised. Need face-to-face. Name the place. N. Her finger hovered over send for 3 long seconds. Once this message left, there was no taking it back. Vance would know she was alive, active, and potentially dangerous. She hit send. The response came in 7 minutes. Philadelphia. Rittenhouse Square. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Come alone or don't come at all. Nora's hands shook as she closed the laptop. He'd taken the bait. Now came the hard part, convincing him she was still the broken agent he'd destroyed, not the weapon she'd become. Her new phone buzzed. J1. Breakfast finished. Uncle very concerned about my emotional state. Suggested I take time away from business decisions. Let him handle things. She typed back. Perfect. Let him think he's winning. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. He asked if I'd seen any strangers at the funeral. Said security reported a disturbance. Nora's pulse spiked. What did you tell him? That grief makes people do irrational things. That I'm reviewing footage personally. A pause. He seemed satisfied. Too satisfied. He's confident. That's good. Confident people make mistakes. Or they're 3 steps ahead and we're already dead. Nora smiled grimly at the phone. Optimism. I like that in a partner. Realism. There's a difference. Then, meeting tomorrow night. Don't die before then. Same to you. She set the phone down and moved to the window, watching rain turn the parking lot into a river of neon reflections. Somewhere in this city, J1 was playing the role of grieving son, while his uncle plotted his death. Somewhere in Philadelphia, Vance was probably smiling, thinking she'd crawled back to him with information worth exploiting. They were both wrong. The next morning arrived gray and cold. Nora caught a train to Philadelphia, dressed in clothes she'd stolen from a department store, dark jeans, plain jacket, nothing memorable. She'd learned long ago how to disappear in crowds, how to move through spaces without leaving impressions. Rittenhouse Square at 2 p.m. was exactly what she expected. Upscale park in the heart of the city, surrounded by expensive townhouses and restaurants. Plenty of witnesses, plenty of exits. Vance's kind of place, public enough to seem safe, urban enough to vanish if needed. She spotted him on a bench near the fountain. 52 years old, silver-haired, wearing a charcoal overcoat that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. He looked exactly like what he pretended to be, a successful consultant, a man who'd earned his comfort through legitimate means. She knew better. Nora approached slowly, hands visible, posture submissive. Everything she'd learned about body language and power dynamics, she reversed. Made herself small, unthreatening. Vance watched her sit down beside him, his expression unreadable behind designer sunglasses. Nora weighed. I thought you'd learned your lesson about approaching me. I learned a lot of things. She kept her voice steady, tired, including that running costs money. Money I don't have anymore. So you're here to sell me information? He sounded amused. That's what this is? A transaction? What else would it be? Revenge, stupidity, suicide. He turned to face her fully. You blamed me for Seattle, but we both know you failed that operation on your own. I simply documented it accurately. The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that for a moment, Nora felt the old rage rising. She swallowed it down, forced her shoulders to slump. You're right. I screwed up. I need to move forward. And I have information you'll want. About White Lotus. About their next target. She pulled out a folded paper from her jacket, carefully prepared, filled with just enough truth to seem legitimate. Chairman of the Nakamura family. They're planning the same play. Natural death, compliant successor, power consolidation. Vance took the paper, scanned it with practiced efficiency. His expression didn't change, but she saw the slight tension in his jaw. Interest. Where did you get this? Intercepted communications. Been tracking them for months. She leaned closer, voice dropping. I know you're working with them. I know about the toxin. I know about the contract killings disguised as heart attacks. His hand shot out faster than she expected, gripping her wrist hard enough to bruise. Careful, Nora. Accusations like that could get you hurt. I'm not accusing. I'm offering. She met his eyes, let him see desperation she didn't feel. You're connected to something big, something profitable, and I want in. I'm good at this work, you know I am. You trained me. I trained someone with principles. His grip tightened. You saying those are gone now? 3 years of living in motels and stealing food tends to adjust one's perspective. She pulled her wrist free. I don't care about right and wrong anymore. I care about survival. So either cut me in, or I take this information to someone who will. Vance studied her for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then he smiled the same smile he'd given her right before destroying her career. You've changed. You made sure of that. Maybe I did. He stood, buttoning his coat. There's a job. Tomorrow night. Nothing complicated. Just surveillance on a potential problem. If you handle it professionally, we'll discuss longer-term arrangements. Where? Newark. I'll send you the address. He started to walk away, then paused. And Nora, if this is a setup, if you're wearing a wire or working with the feds, understand that you won't just disappear. Everyone you've ever cared about will disappear with you. I don't have anyone left to care about. The truth in those words surprised her. You made sure of that too. He nodded, satisfied, and walked away into the afternoon crowd. Nora sat alone on the bench, hands trembling now that he was gone. She'd done it. Convinced him she was broken, desperate, useful. Tomorrow night she'd get the address, walk into whatever surveillance job he'd assigned, and find out exactly how White Lotus operated from the inside. Her phone buzzed. Jaewon. Status? Hookset. Meeting him tomorrow night for a job. Newark. That's my territory. I know. She typed faster. Whatever he has me watching, it's connected to you. Has to be. A longer pause this time. Then we'll be ready. Together. Nora pocketed the phone and stood, melting back into the city crowd. Tomorrow night would either confirm their theory about White Lotus's operation or get them both killed. She was betting on the former, but increasingly, she realized, betting with Jaewon beside her felt less like gambling and more like something she couldn't quite name yet. Something dangerous and electric and terrifyingly close to trust. The address Vance sent was a restaurant in Newark's ironbound district. Portuguese place. Family-owned. The kind with checkered tablecloths and faded photos on the walls. Nora arrived an hour early, scoped the exits, identified the security cameras. Standard surveillance protocol, except nothing about this felt standard. Her phone buzzed with Vance's instructions. Second floor, corner table. Subject arrives at 8 p.m. Photograph him with whoever he meets. Note everything said. Do not intervene. She texted back. Understood. Then immediately sent a message to Jaewon. Portuguese restaurant, ironbound. Second floor, you're the target. His response was instant. I know. My uncle scheduled dinner there tonight. Said he wanted to introduce me to a business associate. Nora's blood went cold. It's a test. Vance is checking if I'll report on you. Or he's using you to confirm I'll be there. Could be setting up another attempt. Then cancel. No. She could almost see his expression through the text. If I cancel, Uncle gets suspicious. We lose our advantage. If you go, you could die. Not if you're watching my back. Nora stared at the message, her mind racing through scenarios. Everyone ended badly, but backing out now meant losing Vance's trust, losing access to White Lotus operations. They'd spent 3 days building this play. Abandoning it wasn't an option. Fine, but we do this smart. I'll be armed. You bring backup. Already planned. 2 of my most trusted men, stationed outside. They don't know about you. Keep it that way. She pocketed the phone and climbed the narrow stairs to the second floor. The dining area was smaller than below 6 tables, soft lighting, a window overlooking the street. She chose the corner table, Vance specified, ordered coffee, and waited. At exactly 8 p.m., Jaewon arrived. He moved through the restaurant like he owned it, which in this neighborhood he probably did. Dark suit, no tie, hair slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it, playing the part of the overwhelmed heir perfectly. Behind him came his uncle. Nora's hand tightened on her coffee cup. She'd seen photos in the surveillance files, but seeing him in person was different. Late 50s, distinguished, with the same sharp features as Jaewon, but weathered by decades of violence masked as business. He smiled at other diners, shook hands with the owner, played the role of respected elder. She wanted to put a bullet through his skull. Instead, she raised her phone, snapped a photo as instructed, and watched them sit 3 tables away, close enough to hear fragments of conversation, close enough to see Jaewon's micro-expressions as his father's killer offered sympathy and guidance. You're handling the transition well, the uncle said, voice carrying in the quiet restaurant. Your father would be proud. I'm trying. Jaewon's voice was perfectly calibrated, grateful, uncertain. But there's so much I don't understand yet. The alliances, the arrangements he made. That's why I'm here. To help you navigate these waters until you're ready. Nora's phone buzzed. Text from Vance. The third man. Focus on him. She looked up sharply. Third man? There were only... The door opened. Nora's breath stopped. The man who entered was Asian, mid-40s, wearing an expensive suit that screamed corporate lawyer or high-level executive. He carried himself with quiet confidence, nodded to Jaewon's uncle like they were old friends, and sat down at their table without invitation. But it wasn't his appearance that made Nora's blood freeze. It was the tattoo barely visible at his collar, a white lotus blossom. She snapped 3 photos, hands steady despite her racing pulse, and sent them to Vance as instructed. Then she sent them to her own encrypted backup with a single message to Jaewon. Third man at your table. White lotus tattoo. This is bigger than we thought. Under the table, she felt Jaewon's phone vibrate. Watched him glance at it casually, expression never changing, but his hand, resting on the table, curled into a fist so tight his knuckles went white. The third man spoke, voice too low to carry, but Nora read his lips, years of surveillance training making the words clear. The transition is proceeding smoothly. The other families are cooperating. Once the consolidation is complete, we'll control 70% of East Coast operations. Jaewon's uncle nodded. And the remaining families? Being handled. The man's smile was cold. Same protocol as before. Natural causes, compliant successors, no messy wars. What about my nephew? The uncle's voice carried false concern. He's more resilient than his father. Smarter. Then we'll need to be smarter still. The third man looked directly at Jaewon. Tell me, how are you really handling your grief? Any suspicions about your father's death? The restaurant went silent. Nora's hand moved to the gun concealed at her hip, ready. Jaewon's guards outside would be monitoring, but not close enough if this went wrong. If they made a move now. Suspicions? Jaewon's laugh was bitter, broken, perfect. My father was 61 years old. He worked 18-hour days, barely slept, carried the weight of this entire organization. I'm suspicious that he didn't collapse sooner. He met the man's eyes. The only thing I'm worried about is living up to his legacy, not chasing conspiracy theories. The tension eased fractionally. The uncle smiled, patted Jaewon's hand. See? I told you. He's grieving, not investigating. We have nothing to worry about. Good. The third man stood. Then let's discuss the financial transitions. There are accounts that need to be consolidated, assets that need to be transferred. They moved to business talk numbers, percentages, offshore accounts. Nora photographed everything, recorded what she could, and fought the urge to intervene. Every word confirmed their theory. White Lotus wasn't just killing syndicate leaders, they were staging a complete takeover, using family members to legitimize the power grab, and Jaewon's uncle was the architect. Her phone buzzed. Vance, good work. Leave now, don't be seen. She wanted to refuse. Wanted to stay, make sure Jaewon made it out alive. But leaving was part of the play. Trust the plan, trust the partner. Nora stood, dropped cash on the table, and walked out without looking back. Outside, the night air hit her like a slap. She moved quickly, turned the corner, and finally allowed herself to check her phone. Message from Jaewon. Sent 2 minutes ago. Did you see his face? The third man? Yes. Why? Because I've seen him before. A pause that felt like an eternity. He was at my father's hospital room, the night before he died. Said he was a doctor checking vitals. Nora stopped walking. The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. He administered the poison personally, and my uncle watched him do it. She leaned against a brick wall, mind racing. This wasn't just about succession anymore. This was about Jaewon's uncle murdering his own brother, using White Lotus resources, and now sitting across from the man who'd actually killed him while discussing business over Portuguese food. Her phone rang. Vance. She answered. I got the photos. I know. You did well. His voice was pleased, almost paternal. The subject is exactly who we thought. He's meeting with White Lotus leadership to finalize the Newark territory transfer. Who is he? Need to know basis, Nora. But you've proven yourself useful. There's another job, bigger this time, tomorrow. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at the Warehouse District, Pier 47, 10 p.m. He paused. And Nora? Bring that edge I saw today. You're going to need it. The line went dead. Nora stared at her phone, then at the restaurant where Jaewon was still trapped at a table with his father's killers, performing the role of his life. Tomorrow night, she'd walk into Vance's trap at Pier 47, but tonight, she had to make sure Jaewon survived long enough to see tomorrow. She pulled up his number, typed, "Get out as soon as you can. We need to talk. Now." The response came fast. "Can't. Uncle insists on driving me home. Wants to discuss the meeting. That's not safe. Nothing about this is safe. Then, but I'll call you when I'm clear. Promise." Nora watched the restaurant entrance, waiting. 20 minutes later, Jaewon emerged with his uncle, both men laughing like they hadn't just discussed empire building over a corpse's legacy. She watched them drive away into Newark's neon-lit streets, and felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in 3 years. Fear, not for herself. For him, Jaewon didn't call. Nora paced her motel room for 2 hours, phone clutched in her hand, every worst-case scenario playing through her mind. Car accident staged, poisoning during the drive, a bullet to the back of the head in some abandoned lot. At midnight, she was reaching for her backup gun when the phone finally rang. "Where are you?" Her voice came out sharper than intended. "Safe house. Alone." Jaewon sounded exhausted. "Uncle wanted to come inside, have tea, discuss succession protocols. I told him I needed sleep." He looked disappointed. "Disappointed that he couldn't poison your tea, you mean?" "Probably." A long exhale. "That doctor, the third man, his name is Dr. Sung. Uncle said he's a family friend helping with the medical examiner's office, making sure father's autopsy didn't raise unnecessary questions." Nora's stomach twisted. "He's their cleaner, handles the evidence after the kills. Which means he knows about the toxin, the delivery method, everything." Jaewon's voice hardened. "And he's walking around free because my uncle is protecting him." "Not for much longer." She sat on the edge of the bed. "Vance wants to meet tomorrow night. Pier 47, Warehouse District, says there's a bigger job. He's escalating your involvement. Testing how far you'll go. Or setting up an execution." Nora rubbed her eyes. "Either way, I have to show up. It's our only way deeper into White Lotus operations." Silence stretched between them. Then, "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. Nora, if Vance sees you anywhere near that pier, we're both dead. He thinks I'm alone, desperate, no backup. The second he suspects I'm working with you, this entire operation collapses. Then I'll stay hidden." Distant surveillance. His tone left no room for argument. "You're walking into a potential ambush. I'm not letting you do that without eyes on the situation." Something warm and dangerous flickered in her chest. "You barely know me. I know you saved my life twice. I know you're hunting the same people I am. And I know—" He stopped, seemed to reconsider his words. "I know that if something happens to you, I lose my only real ally in this war. Practical. Always." But his voice carried something else. Something neither of them was ready to name. "Fine. Distant surveillance only. If things go wrong, you extract and burn everything. Don't try to save me. We'll see about that." She heard him moving, rustling papers. "I pulled building schematics for Pier 47. Abandoned fish processing plant. Condemned 3 years ago. 8 exits, multiple levels, perfect for an ambush. Or a meeting point where screaming won't carry." Comforting thought. A pause. "There's something else. My uncle called an emergency meeting of the family council. Tomorrow afternoon. Said it's time to officially recognize my leadership position." Nora's instincts screamed warning. "That's fast. Too fast." Agreed. Normal protocol would be months of transition, gradual power transfer. His voice went cold. "He's rushing it. Which means either he's planning to eliminate me during the ceremony itself, or he needs you officially recognized before White Lotus makes their final move." Nora stood, began pacing again. "If you're the legitimate chairman when the consolidation happens, all your father's agreements transfer to you. Your signature legitimizes their takeover, and once I've signed everything they need, you become expendable." She felt the pieces clicking into place. The meeting with Vance, the family council, Dr. Sung being at dinner, it's all coordinated. They're moving on multiple fronts simultaneously. Then we move faster. Jaewon's voice carried deadly certainty. "The council meeting is at 4 p.m. I'll play along. Sign whatever they want. Act grateful. Buy us time until your meeting with Vance tonight. And then we stop playing defense and start burning their operation down from the inside." She heard the smile in his voice, dark, dangerous. "Starting with Dr. Sung. What about him? He'll be at the council meeting. Required presence for all family advisors. Jaewon's tone went clinical, which means his apartment will be empty. And I'm willing to bet a man who makes murder look like natural causes keeps very detailed records. Nora felt her pulse quicken. You want to break into his place during your own council meeting? I want you to break into his place. I'll be establishing alibis, surrounded by witnesses. The plan crystallized as he spoke. Find his records, find proof of White Lotus operations, find anything we can use against my uncle and Vance. That's a massive risk. Everything about this is a massive risk. His voice softened slightly. But I trust you to handle it. You're better at this than anyone I've ever worked with. The compliment landed unexpectedly, warming something in her chest she'd thought long dead. You're just saying that because I saved your life. I'm saying that because it's true. A pause. And because somewhere between the funeral and now, I stopped seeing you as a convenient ally and started seeing you as... He cut himself off. Nora waited, heart hammering. As someone I don't want to lose. He finished quietly. The vulnerability in those words hit harder than any weapon. Nora gripped the phone tighter, searched for a response that wouldn't reveal how much his admission affected her. Don't get sentimental on me, Cha. We've got work to do. His laugh was soft, genuine. Yes, ma'am. Send me Dr. Sung's address when you have it. I'll forward his schedule. And Jaewon? She hesitated. At that council meeting, watch what you eat. Watch what you touch. Trust no one. I stopped trusting people the day my father died. A beat. Except you. For some reason, I trust you completely. The line went dead before she could respond. Nora sat in the darkness of her motel room, phone still pressed to her ear, feeling the weight of his trust settle over her like armor and vulnerability combined. Tomorrow, she'd break into a killer's apartment while Jaewon signed away his empire. Tomorrow night, she'd walk into Vance's trap at Pier 47, not knowing if she'd walk back out. But for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't facing it alone. Her phone buzzed with an incoming file. Dr. Sung's address, his schedule, building access codes that Jaewon must have pulled from syndicate security databases. Everything she needed to infiltrate his life. She studied the information, mind already mapping entry points and extraction routes. The apartment was in a secure high-rise downtown cameras, doormen, keycard access, difficult but not impossible. Another message from Jaewon. His building uses facial recognition, sending you a bypass code now. And Nora? Yes? Come back alive. I'm getting used to having you around. She smiled despite everything, despite the danger, despite knowing that getting used to Jaewon was probably the most dangerous thing she could do. Same to you. Don't sign anything that ends with, and my entire fortune to my beloved uncle. Noted. Nora set the phone down and began preparing for tomorrow. Weapons check, equipment inventory, mental rehearsal of every possible scenario. The work was familiar, comforting even. What wasn't familiar was the way her chest tightened when she thought about Jaewon walking into that council meeting. The way her hands shook slightly when she imagined something going wrong. She'd spent 3 years teaching herself not to care, not to attach, not to trust. And somehow, in less than 4 days, Cha Jaewon had undone all of it. Outside her window, Newark's lights blurred through rain-streaked glass. Somewhere in this city, Vance was planning her test for tomorrow night. Somewhere else, Jaewon's uncle was perfecting his betrayal. And caught between them were 2 people who decided that revenge and survival were worth risking everything, including the one thing neither of them could afford to lose. Each other. Dr. Sung's apartment was on the 23rd floor of a glass tower that reflected Newark's skyline like a mirror. Nora entered the building at 3:30 p.m., dressed in a borrowed medical uniform with a visitor's badge she'd forged in 20 minutes. The doorman barely glanced up. The elevator ride felt eternal. Her phone showed Jaewon's location, the syndicate's main office across town, where the council meeting had just begun. She pictured him in that room, surrounded by men who wanted him dead, signing documents that would seal his fate if she didn't find what they needed. No pressure. The hallway on the 23rd floor was empty, sterile, the kind of place where neighbors never spoke. She reached apartment 2304, used the bypass code Jaewon had provided, and slipped inside. The space was immaculate. Modern furniture, medical journals stacked precisely on the coffee table, everything arranged with the same cold efficiency Dr. Sung had displayed at the restaurant, the kind of order that came from a man who couldn't afford mistakes. Nora moved quickly, systematically. Bedroom first, nothing. Kitchen, nothing. Bathroom cabinets held prescription bottles with names she didn't recognize. dosages that seemed excessive. Then she found the office. Unlike the rest of the apartment, this room was lived in. Papers covered the desk, medical equipment lined the shelves, and a locked cabinet stood against the far wall. She pulled out her lockpicks, worked the mechanism, and felt the satisfying click of success. Inside were files. Dozens of them. She pulled the first one, flipped it open, and felt her blood run cold. Chairman Cha, complete medical history, date of death, toxin dosage, time of administration, every detail documented with clinical precision. There were others. The syndicate leaders, she'd researched all of them. Their deaths meticulously recorded like lab experiments. Success rates, complications, refinements to the formula. Dr. Sung wasn't just a cleaner. He was White Lotus's chief medical architect, the man who'd perfected murder disguised as natural death. Nora photographed everything, hands steady despite her racing pulse, page after page of evidence that would destroy the entire operation if they played it right. Then she found the active files. 3 folders marked with red tabs. She opened the first. Subject, Cha Haiwan. Method, accelerated protocol. Timeline, 72 hours post-council confirmation. Administration point, family dinner, January 11th. 3 days. They were giving Jae-won 3 days after today's council meeting before they killed him. The second file made her stomach drop. Subject, Wade, Nora. Method, immediate termination. Timeline, following Pier 47 operation. Note, Vance confirms subject has outlived usefulness. Disposal recommended. Her hands shook as she photographed the page. Vance had been planning to kill her all along. Tonight's meeting wasn't a test, it was an execution. The third file was thinner. A single page with a list of names she didn't recognize, locations marked in red. But at the bottom, in Dr. Sung's precise handwriting, Phase 3, complete East Coast consolidation. Eliminate all remaining non-compliant family leadership. Timeline, 30 days. They weren't just taking over the Cha Syndicate. They were planning to eliminate every independent crime family on the East Coast within a month. Nora's phone buzzed. Message from Jae-won. Council meeting extended. Uncle wants me to review financial transfers with his advisors. Something feels wrong. She typed quickly. Get out. Now. I found the files. They're moving up your timeline. Can't leave without raising suspicion. What did you find? They plan to kill you in 3 days. Family dinner, January 11th. Same method as your father. A long pause. Then, so we have 3 days to destroy them. We have less than that. Vance plans to kill me tonight at Pier 47. Another pause. Longer this time. When his response came, it carried weight that transcended text. Then we changed the plan. Don't go to that meeting. If I don't show, Vance goes underground. We lose our only connection to White Lotus leadership. If you do show, you die. Not if I'm smarter than he thinks I am. Nora stared at the files spread across Dr. Sung's desk, mind racing. I have an idea, but I need you to trust me completely. I already do. What do you need? Your best sniper. Someone you'd trust with your life. Done. What else? Access to your uncle's private line. I'm going to make a call he can't ignore. She could almost feel Jae-won's hesitation through the phone. What she was suggesting went beyond dangerous. It was suicide if even one element failed. Nora, whatever you're planning, will work. Because unlike Vance, I learned from my mistakes. She began packing the files back into the cabinet, erasing evidence of her presence. 3 years ago, I trusted the wrong person, and people died. I won't make that mistake again. You're trusting me. You're different. How? She paused in the doorway, looked back at the office where Dr. Sung had catalogued death like it was science. Because you could have let me take the fall at that funeral. Could have shot me, blamed me, moved on, but you didn't. You chose partnership over easy answers. And you chose to save a stranger's life over staying invisible. Maybe we're both idiots. Or maybe we're exactly what each other needs. His message carried something raw, unguarded. Be careful tonight. Please. You too. That dinner on the 11th won't happen, because we're ending this before then. She heard determination in his words, felt it mirror her own. Tonight, we stop running their game and start playing ours. Nora left the apartment exactly as she'd found it, took the elevator down, and walked out into the late afternoon sun. Somewhere above, Dr. Sung's files waited like loaded guns. Somewhere across town, Jae-won was signing documents that made him a target. And tonight, at Pier 47, She'd walk into Vance's trap, with her eyes wide open, but this time, she wouldn't be the prey. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Yes? Miss Wade. Dr. Sung's voice was calm, clinical, terrifying. Did you find what you were looking for in my apartment? Nora's blood froze. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. Just as I don't know how my building's security system recorded you entering my floor at 3:37 p.m. He paused. I'm a thorough man, Miss Wade. I have cameras in places the building doesn't know about. Then you saw me leave empty-handed. I saw you photograph my files. His voice hardened. Which means you now have information that makes you extremely dangerous. To me, to White Lotus, to everyone involved in our operations. If you're calling to threaten me, I'm calling to offer you a choice. He cut her off smoothly. Tonight, at Pier 47, Vance plans to kill you. But he doesn't know I know about your apartment visit, which means I could warn him you're compromised. Or what? Or I could stay silent. Let you walk into that meeting with information I can use against Vance myself. She heard the smile in his voice. You see, Miss Wade, I'm not loyal to anyone except the highest bidder. And right now you have leverage I find interesting. You want to switch sides. I want to survive. White Lotus is consolidating power too quickly, eliminating everyone who knows too much. Eventually, that will include me. His voice dropped. So yes, I'm proposing a trade. Your silence about my files in exchange for intelligence that will keep you alive tonight. Nora's mind raced through possibilities, angles, traps within traps. I'm listening. Pier 47 isn't a meeting. It's an execution chamber. Vance has 4 men positioned throughout the building, each with instructions to eliminate you the moment you arrive. He never planned to recruit you, he planned to remove a loose end. Why tell me this? Because if you survive tonight, you'll be in a position to eliminate Vance, which removes him from the equation and makes my own survival more likely. He paused, and because Cha Jae-won's uncle is planning something catastrophic for that family dinner on the 11th, something that will eliminate not just Jae-won, but everyone loyal to him, an explosion disguised as a gas leak. Nora's chest tightened. You're telling me they plan to kill an entire room of people? 23 people, to be precise. Every underboss, every advisor, every family member who might challenge the uncle's claim to leadership. His voice was matter of fact, like he was discussing weather. It's efficient, brutal, and scheduled to happen in exactly 3 days. What do you want in return for this information? Safe passage out of the country, new identity, and $10 million from Cha Jae-won's accounts. He named his price without hesitation. Help me disappear, and I'll give you everything you need to destroy White Lotus and Vance. That's a lot to ask for information I can't verify. Then verify it. Have Jae-won check his uncle's recent purchases. You'll find he ordered industrial-grade propane tanks last week, far more than any legitimate business would need. The line went dead. Nora stood on the Newark street, mind reeling. Dr. Sung had just handed her the keys to destroying everyone or walked her straight into a trap more elaborate than she'd imagined. She dialed Jae-won. He answered immediately. We have a problem, she said. And it's bigger than we thought. Jae-won met her at an abandoned subway station 30 minutes later. He came alone, despite her protests, descending the graffiti-covered stairs into the underground platform like he was walking into a boardroom. Even in the dim emergency lighting, he looked sharp, controlled except for his eyes. Those betrayed the fury simmering beneath the surface. Propane tanks? His voice echoed off concrete walls. You're certain? Dr. Sung was very specific. Nora handed him her phone, showing the photographs she'd taken of the files. 23 people, 3 days. He's planning to eliminate everyone loyal to you in one move. Jae-won scrolled through the images, his jaw tightening with each swipe. When he reached the file marked with his name, his hand stilled. 72 hours. They documented my death like a grocery list. They documented all of them. She moved closer, lowered her voice. Your father, the other chairman, you, everyone is just data to them, success rates and dosage adjustments. And Dr. Sung wants to sell us this information for 10 million and an escape route, which could be legitimate, or could be the most elaborate setup we've walked into yet. Nora leaned against the subway wall, exhaustion creeping into her bones. But his detail about the propane tanks, that's verifiable. If your uncle really ordered them, I'll know within the hour. Jae-won was already typing on his phone. I have someone who can access procurement records without raising flags. He looked up. But even if it's true, Even if we confirm the dinner is a trap, that doesn't solve tonight's problem. Pire concept. Where Vance has 4 men waiting to kill you the moment you arrive. His expression darkened. You're not going. I have to. No, you don't. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his eyes, smell the faint scent of rain still clinging to his suit. We have the files now. We have evidence. We can take this to... To who? Nora cut him off. Your uncle controls the police in this territory. White Lotus has federal contacts that killed my entire career over a phone call. The evidence means nothing if we don't have leverage to use it. Then we use Dr. Sung. Dr. Sung is a wild card who might be playing both sides. She held his stare. The only way to guarantee we survive this is to eliminate Vance tonight. On our terms. Before he knows we're coming. 4 armed men, Nora. In a building designed for ambush. Which is why I'm not walking in blind. She pulled up the Pier 47 schematics on her phone. You said you have your best sniper? Lee. Former military. Never missed a shot in 12 years. Position him here. She pointed to a warehouse across from Pier 47. Clear sightlines to the main entrance and the east loading dock. 2 exits covered. That leaves 6 more, which is where your ground team comes in. I need 4 more people trustworthy, silent, lethal. They create a perimeter. Cut off Vance's escape routes without engaging. She traced the map with her finger. I go in the front. Make contact. Keep Vance talking. The moment his men reveal their positions, Lee takes them out. Jaewon studied the schematic, his tactical mind already working through angles. And if Vance is armed, then I handle him myself. Her voice went cold. I've waited 3 years for this. I'm not letting anyone else take that shot. Jaewon was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, you're using yourself as bait. I'm using their arrogance against them. Vance thinks I'm desperate, broken, easy to manipulate. He won't expect resistance until it's too late. And if Dr. Sung lied, if there are more than 4 men, then we adapt. She met his eyes, let him see the steel beneath her exhaustion. This is what I do, Jaewon. What I was trained for. Trust me to do it. I do trust you. His voice dropped lower. That's what terrifies me. The admission hung between them, heavy with implications neither had time to explore. Nora felt her pulse quicken, felt the pull of proximity, and shared danger and something deeper she refused to name. After tonight, she said quietly. After we end Vance and stop your uncle. After tonight, we're both either dead or finally free. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with unexpected gentleness. I know which one I'm betting on. Always so optimistic. Realistic. His hand lingered near her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Because I've seen what you're capable of. And anyone betting against you is a fool. Nora's breath caught. For 3 years, she'd taught herself to stay detached, to keep emotions locked down where they couldn't compromise missions. But standing here in this abandoned subway station with Jaewon's hand warm against her skin, she felt every defense crumbling. We should go, she managed. Get your team in position before sunset. Nora. He didn't move. After tonight, if we both survive this, I need you to know something. Don't. She stepped back, forced distance between them. Don't say anything that sounds like goodbye. We're both walking out of this. That's not what I was going to say. Then what? He studied her face like he was memorizing every detail. That meeting you at my father's funeral, that kiss, everything since. It's the first time in my life I've felt like someone actually sees me. Not the title, not the empire, not the heir, just me. The words landed like a physical touch. Nora's chest tightened with something that felt dangerously close to hope. Jaewon, you don't have to respond. He smiled, small and genuine. I just needed to say it. Before tonight, before we walk into hell, before she could stop herself. Nora closed the distance between them and kissed him. Not like at the funeral, not tactical, not calculated. This was raw, desperate, electric. His hands found her waist, pulled her closer. Her fingers tangled in his hair. 3 years of isolation, of rage, of emptiness, it all burned away in the heat of his mouth against hers. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jaewon's expression had shifted into something fierce and possessive. Now you have to survive, he said, voice rough, because I'm not done with you yet. Is that a threat or a promise? Both. He kissed her again, briefer this time but no less intense. 8 p.m., Pier 47. My team will be in position by 7:30. And you? We'll be exactly where I promised, watching your back from a distance." He pulled out a small earpiece, pressed it into her palm. "Direct line to me and Lee. You're not going in there alone, even if it looks like you are." Nora closed her fingers around the device, felt its weight like a lifeline. If this goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, then we go down fighting. Jaewon cupped her face with both hands, forced her to meet his eyes. Together, no matter what. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They left the subway station separately, him first, then her 10 minutes later. Professional distance, operational security, all the rules they'd followed for years. But everything had changed. As Nora emerged into the fading daylight, checking her weapons one final time, she felt the earpiece heavy in her pocket and tasted Jaewon on her lips. Tonight, she'd face the man who destroyed her life. Tonight, she'd either get her revenge or detrying. And somewhere in the chaos, she'd stopped being alone. Her phone buzzed. Message from Jaewon. "Propane tanks confirmed. Uncle ordered 15 industrial tanks last Tuesday. Delivery scheduled for tomorrow morning." Nora's blood ran cold. Dr. Sung had been telling the truth, which meant everything else he'd said was likely true too. She had 4 hours until Pier 47. 4 hours to prepare for an ambush she now knew was coming. 4 hours to decide if she was walking toward revenge or walking straight into her grave. She typed back, "See you on the other side." His response was immediate. "Count on it." Pier 47 looked exactly like a place where people went to die. The old fish processing plant loomed against the twilight sky, its broken windows reflecting the last traces of sunset like wounds. Rusted metal, crumbling concrete, the smell of salt water and decay. Perfect for an execution. Nora arrived at 7:50 p.m., 10 minutes early. The earpiece sat snug in her ear canal, invisible. Her gun rested against her spine, concealed under her jacket. She dressed simply: dark jeans, boots, nothing that would restrict movement. "In position." Lee's voice crackled through the earpiece, calm and professional. 4 heat signatures inside the building. 1 main floor, 3 on the second level. "Confirmed." Jaewon's voice followed. "Vance is the ground floor signature. He's waiting for you by the east entrance." Nora took a steadying breath. "Anyone else approaching?" "Perimeter is clear. You're good to move." She crossed the cracked parking lot, boots crunching on broken glass. The east entrance gaped open like a mouth no door, just darkness beyond the threshold. She paused just outside, letting her eyes adjust. "Nora." Vance's voice drifted from inside. "Punctual as always. Come in." She stepped into the building. The main floor was a gutted shell processing equipment stripped years ago, leaving only rust stains on concrete. Emergency lighting flickered from a generator somewhere, casting everything in sickly yellow. Vance stood 50 feet away, hands in his coat pockets, looking relaxed. Too relaxed. "Hell of a place for a job interview," Nora said, moving closer but maintaining distance. "I prefer privacy for sensitive discussions." He smiled. "Did you get the surveillance photos from the restaurant?" "Sent them yesterday, as requested." "Yes, you did." Vance pulled out his phone, showed her the images she'd taken of Jaewon, his uncle, Dr. Sung. "Very thorough work. You captured everything I needed. So what's the job?" "Direct. I always appreciated that about you." He pocketed the phone. "The job is simple elimination. A target who knows too much, who's become a liability to our operations." "Who's the target?" "You are." Nora didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there as if she'd expected it all along. "Figured as much." Vance's smile widened. "No surprise? No fear? You've changed, Nora. You changed me." She kept her voice steady. 3 years ago, you taught me that trust was weakness, that survival meant staying 3 steps ahead. So yes, I knew this was a setup, just like I know you have 3 men positioned upstairs, waiting for your signal. 4 men, actually. He pulled his hand from his pocket, not holding a gun, but a remote detonator. And they're not waiting for a signal. They're waiting for this. Nora's pulse spiked. "That's not a weapon, that's explosives. C4, to be precise, wired throughout the building's support columns." His expression went cold. "You see, White Lotus doesn't leave witnesses. And you, my dear former protege, have become entirely too knowledgeable about operations you should never have discovered." "Lee." Jaewon's voice cut through the earpiece, urgent. "Multiple hostiles approaching from the north. 8, maybe 10 vehicles. This is bigger than we thought." Nora's mind raced. Vance wasn't just eliminating her, he was eliminating everyone connected to this operation. The men upstairs, the perimeter, witnesses who could link him to White Lotus. "You're going to blow the entire building," she said quietly. "With everyone inside?" "Yes." Vance checked his watch. "Including some very inconvenient associates who think they're coming here for a planning meeting. They'll arrive in about 3 minutes. And then," he held up the detonator. "Problem solved. You're killing your own people. I'm eliminating loose ends." He stepped closer. "That's what professionals do. You should have learned that by now." "I did learn." Nora's hand moved slowly toward her spine. "I learned that people like you always make one critical mistake." "And what's that?" "You assume everyone else is as expendable as you are." She drew and fired in one fluid motion. The shot took Vance in the shoulder, spinning him backward. The detonator flew from his hand, skittered across concrete. Nora was already moving, diving for it as gunfire erupted from the second floor. "Lee, light them up," Jaewon's voice commanded. The windows above exploded. Glass rained down as Lee's rifle found targets. One shooter dropped, then another. Return fire punched through metal, ricocheted off concrete. Nora's fingers closed around the detonator. She rolled, came up behind a rusted support beam as bullets sparked off steel inches from her head. "Nora, status." Jaewon's voice cut through the chaos. "I have the detonator." Vance is hit but mobile. She risked a glance around the beam. Vance had disappeared into the shadows, leaving a blood trail. "Where are those vehicles?" "Pulling in now, armed men deploying." A pause. "This isn't a meeting, it's an army." Her stomach dropped. "They're not here for a meeting. They're here for a purge." Vance is eliminating everyone who knows about White Lotus operations, including Jaewon's uncle. What? Think about it. The propane tanks, the dinner explosion that's 3 days away. But Vance moves tonight because he's cutting out the middleman. Your uncle hired him to kill you, but Vance doesn't need him anymore. He has direct White Lotus backing now. Silence. Then, "My uncle just arrived. His car is pulling up to the north entrance. Get him out of here. Now. He tried to kill my father." "Kill me? Why would I?" "Because if he dies in this explosion, you lose the only person who can testify against White Lotus leadership. We need him alive, Jaewon. As much as we hate it." More gunfire. Something exploded on the second floor, maybe a grenade, maybe Lee's rifle hitting something volatile. Smoke began filling the building. "Nora, you need to move. Now." Jaewon's voice carried an edge she'd never heard. "That building is structurally unsound. If those explosives go off, they won't." She clutched the detonator, studying its simple design. 2 buttons, one to arm, one to detonate. Already armed. "I can disarm this. Just need 30 seconds. "You don't have 30 seconds. Those men are coming through every entrance." He was right. She could hear boots on concrete, voices shouting in Korean and English. At least 20 men, converging from multiple directions. The trap had sprung not just on her, but on everyone Vance wanted dead, including Jaewon's uncle, who'd walked straight into his own execution. Change of plans. Nora made a decision that would either save them all or kill her. "Lee, target the support columns on the north side. Bring down that section only." "That'll trap everyone inside," Lee protested. "That's the point. If we collapse the north entrance, we bottle them in. Vance can't detonate with his own people trapped." She was already moving, running through the smoke toward the south exit, "and we buy time to extract your uncle." "Nora," Jaewon started. "Trust me." She burst through the south door into cold night air, gasping. Behind her, Lee's rifle cracked 3 times in rapid succession. Metal groaned, concrete crumbled, the north side of Pier 47 collapsed inward with a thunderous roar. Screaming, shouting, chaos as the building became a tomb for everyone who'd come to witness her execution. But Nora was already running toward the north parking lot, toward the confusion, toward Jaewon's uncle who stood beside his car, staring at the collapsed building in shock. She grabbed his arm. He spun, reaching for a weapon, but she was faster. "You want to live," she hissed. "Then get in your car and drive. Now, who are you?" "The woman who just saved your life while your hired killer tried to blow you up." She shoved him toward the vehicle. "Vance doesn't need you anymore. You're as expendable as the rest of us." Understanding dawned in his eyes. Then fear. "Where's my nephew?" "Safe. Unlike you if you don't move." She heard voices approaching, saw flashlight beams cutting through dust and darkness. "Go. Now. We'll contact you." He hesitated one more second, then dove into his car. The engine roared to life. Tires squealed as he fled into the night. Nora ran the opposite direction, toward where Jaewon's perimeter team waited. Toward safety. Toward... A hand grabbed her from behind, spun her around. Vance's face materialized from the shadows, blood-soaked, furious, and holding a gun to her head. "Not so fast," he whispered. "Drop the detonator." Vance's gun pressed cold against Nora's temple. "Or I paint this parking lot with your brain." She could feel his blood soaking through her jacket, smell the copper tang of it. He was wounded, weakening, but desperation made men dangerous. "You shoot me. You alert everyone to your position," Nora said calmly, "and you're already bleeding out. Then we die together. Poetic, don't you think?" "Nora," Jaewon's voice in her ear, tight with controlled panic. "Lee has the shot. Say the word." She couldn't respond without alerting Vance to the earpiece. Instead, she did the only thing she could. She tilted her head slightly left, exposing Vance's position. The rifle crack split the night. Vance's grip went slack. The gun clattered to asphalt. He staggered backward, hand clutching his chest, eyes wide with disbelief. "You taught me one last lesson," Nora said, watching him fall. "Never underestimate the student." He collapsed, blood pooling beneath him. His lips moved, forming words she couldn't hear. Then nothing. 3 years. 3 years of hunting, planning, surviving, and it ended in a parking lot with a single shot. Nora dropped to her knees, the detonator still clutched in her hand, adrenaline draining away and leaving only exhaustion. "Nora." Jaewon appeared from the darkness, running toward her. He skidded to a stop, pulled her up, checked her for injuries with frantic hands. "Are you hurt?" "No. Her voice cracked. "It's over. Vance is dead." He pulled her against his chest, held her like she might disappear. She felt his heart hammering, felt his breath against her hair, and finally let herself break. 3 years of rage and pain and isolation poured out in silent shaking. "You're safe," he whispered. "I've got you." Behind them, sirens wailed. Flashing lights approached from multiple directions. White Lotus operatives were trapped in the collapsed building or fleeing into the night. The operation had imploded spectacularly. "Your uncle?" Nora managed. "Gone. But we have his car on camera, his testimony waiting." Jaewon pulled back, cupped her face. "Dr. Sung sent files to 3 separate news outlets an hour ago. Insurance policy," he said. "Everything about White Lotus, the syndicate murders, all of it. It's over." Just like that. Just like that. He smiled, exhausted but genuine. "We burned it all down." Nora looked at the detonator in her hand, then at Vance's body, then at the man who'd become her partner in the span of 4 impossible days. "What happens now?" "Now?" Jaewon's expression shifted into something she'd never seen before. "Hope. Now we rebuild. My father's syndicate becomes legitimate, like he always wanted. Your name gets cleared with the files we have. And we..." He hesitated. "We figure out what this is between us. In the middle of everything else? Especially in the middle of everything else." He kissed her, soft and certain. "You saved my life twice, destroyed my enemies, and somehow made me believe in partnership again. I'm not letting you walk away." "Who said I was walking anywhere?" "Then stay." His voice dropped. "Help me build something worth protecting. Something that honors what we've both lost." Nora looked at him, this Mafia boss who'd become her ally, her partner, possibly more. Then she looked at the detonator, symbol of everything she'd fought against. She threw it into the harbor. "Okay," she said simply. "Let's build." 3 months later, Cha Jae-won stood before a congressional hearing, testifying against White Lotus operations with Nora Wade beside him, no longer a ghost, but an official consultant for organized crime reform. His uncle had turned state's evidence, was serving 15 years in protective custody. Dr. Sung had disappeared with his 10 million, leaving behind enough evidence to dismantle 3 criminal organizations, and every night, Jaewon came home to the woman who'd crashed his father's funeral and changed everything. They'd broken protocol, broken rules, broken every expectation of how their story should have ended. But somehow, they'd found something neither expected, a second chance at life, built on ashes and trust, and one reckless kiss that started it all. As they left the hearing room that final day, Nora took his hand. "No regrets?" Jaewon smiled. "Only that I didn't meet you sooner. You weren't ready for me sooner." "Fair point." He pulled her close, Kissed her in front of cameras and reporters and the whole world. Ready now, though. Good, Nora whispered against his lips. Because I'm not done with you yet either. They walked out together into a future neither could have imagined, two people who'd learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is trust someone completely. And sometimes, that's exactly what saves you. The greatest act of rebellion is choosing to build, instead of destroy, even when destruction feels like justice. If this story took you on a journey from that funeral kiss to this moment of redemption, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to believe in second chances, and drop a comment telling me which moment had your heart racing the fastest. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to bring you the next story. Until then, stay dangerous, stay hopeful, and remember, sometimes the most powerful weapon is knowing when to trust. See you in the next one.